It comes down to why some people grow faster than you on Threads. I have been on Threads for 20 months now, and I've seen lots of people start much later than me, grow much faster. What I want to do is show you why that is. 5 actionable things you can do starting today to make the algorithm work for you instead of against you. Let's dive in. Starting with first principles or a guiding principle. And this is, what does Threads or Meta care about? And I'd actually love to put it to you all on the call, because I think it's an interesting group discussion. What do you think Meta, Zuck, cares about when he creates a new social media platform like he did with Threads? What matters to them? And there are no wrong or right answers here. Yeah, Becca, keeping people on the platform. Juliana, Becca is just dollar signs. Yes. Any other answers? These are all great. Intentional engagement and consistent value. Yep. Anything else? Create a new community for engagement. Perfect. Might go for one more. Relevant among competitors. Ooh. Could you elaborate, Captain Yasmin?
So usually from a marketing perspective, corporately, there are businesses that have always got one eye on their competitors, and it's about having a bigger slice of the pie, so that if you are not doing something and they are, it's easier to keep your customers if you have the same features. An example is when Instagram first launched Stories, which came from Snapchat, then they launched Reels, which came from TikTok, and they changed the sizing of the posts so that they could rank with other things as well. So I feel, and obviously once again, Threads came from Twitter. It's about having a bigger slice of the pie, bigger industry reach, and being the bigger brand, keeping their customers there.
Yep. Love it. Everyone was spot on. The first 2 ones were fundamentally what Becca said at the start. That's what it all comes down to. For better or worse, this is a capitalist society and it's all about money. So then we reverse engineer it. And how do we get more money? And I'm thinking from Zuck's perspective, and all the answers that you provided are correct. The next way they get more money is by keeping people on the platform. And that's what Juliana said. Why? Because of advertisers. Now, you might be thinking, Lennox, there are no advertisers on Threads yet. And they have officially announced that ads are coming at some point this year. I realized the other day that there is another side to that story that people who really want to take their brand seriously on Threads can use to their advantage, which is actually using those ads to build your brand on Threads. Nonetheless, it's through ads, and that's how they make the money. How they make those ads more profitable for the advertisers, they need eyeballs. And that is where Juliana's answer came into play, because you need to keep people on a platform to get the eyeballs. How do you keep people on the platform? You need attention. How do you grab attention? You have great content. Does everyone understand just that overview of how it works, from they need money to we need to keep people on the platform, to we need to like capture attention, to great content and everything else that comes as a result of that. Really important to bear that in mind, because that is all they care about. And if that's all they care about, we should be thinking as creators on Threads, what can we do to make essentially Zuck happy? Because it's his house. We all know that the social media platform, it's not like an email list or a community where if you've got an email address, then you can go to any platform and still be able to reach your people. That is not the case on a platform like Threads. Anything can change. And I know many of us have experienced this, including Captain Yasmin the other day, where you're just suspended randomly. And then like, it doesn't make any sense. You go and dispute it. And thankfully, a few hours later, it's all good. But Captain Sam as well, like that's fucking scary, especially when you put so much time into this. We need to play by their rules. Here's the thing that I find really interesting. Everything I've just said about what Zuck cares about, what Meta, what Threads cares about. It's in the tagline itself of Threads. And this is the guiding principle. If you can take away one thing from the call today, it's these two words. Yaz, if you wouldn't mind putting that question from Natalia at the bottom of the class, and we'll address that one at the end, because that is a great question. Also, a quick shout out to the other Becca. We've got two Becca. See you, dude. The question is out to all of you. Put it in the chat or speak up. What is the tagline of Threads? It's two words. Okay. Literally, say more. That's it. Think about how the tagline directly feeds into the bottom line of Threads. If you say more, you get more people to come onto the platform, to engage on the platform, to capture more attention, which means more time on the platform, which means more eyeballs for the advertisers, which means more money to Zuck. Can we all see how it's all fitting into this bigger picture so far? Without understanding those principles, everything else we talk about exists in the abstract. But if you know the why, then you can see how it all fits together. So a few reactions in the chat. Is this making sense so far? Is it interesting? Now, we've just discussed how the Threads tagline, it's say more. Like, how do we do that? Well, how do we turn that into things that we should be doing differently, or to do more of, or to do better? This is where I think Threads differs from Twitter. It's not just about your one-off viral tweets. Honestly, that right there is where I have made a mistake on Threads, especially recently, because more and more of my time has been going into Saints College, and more recently, our paid community Full Circle as of 7 weeks ago. Now, obviously, saying more is a function of the time you have to say more. I'll discuss more of that a bit later. But it's about the ongoing conversations. So this means that Meta will reward posts that spark discussions or conversations. I'll delve into that in a moment again, but we want to spark discussions. We want to keep people engaged for longer. Yep, as Becca said, more comments. We want to keep people engaged for longer, which means long form posts. You've got someone's attention more if they're reading a long piece of text than a one-liner, right? If you've got someone's attention for 30 seconds in a long form post, that is going to be better. Zuck will like you more. You'll be in his good books more than if you post a one-liner that has 1 second of attention. It's a whole different story in terms of how you retain someone's attention or hold it for 30 seconds. Still, keeping people engaged for longer is another one. Then, the bottom line, yeah, Natalia, we'll address that one towards the end of the class as well, because it's a great point. We want to encourage connections as well. And we can call it these things like engagement loops. And this is follow-up replies. Someone replies to your post, you reply to them. But then, and this is where I have gone wrong, and this is a bit of a mistake that I'm working on now. Side note, this is part 1 of the Threads algorithm. Part 2, and this is what to do. Part 2 will be next week about what not to do. Basically, if I go and comment on, I don't know, a big creator's post, and I say, love this, does that say more? Does that do anything? Does that get people to, exactly, Juliana, it does not get people to, yeah, great post, or facts, or 100 emoji. Like, it does nothing. It does not really give the person, so if someone comments something like that on my post, it doesn't give me much to say more about. So that means we're not sparking a discussion, we're not keeping people engaged for longer, and we're not encouraging connections through engagement loops. Now, what is an engagement loop? Let's say, and this would be where it'll be useful for me to actually share my screen, because so far we've just been talking about theory stuff. I think it's important to ground this in. Deronda, welcome to college class. Great timing. Actually, that was very handy. This was the last post I was looking at. It's Captain Leashes. So let's have a look. Great post, Becca. All right, I'm going to refresh. Let's have a look. Hey, we've got a few people in the class right now. And Fernie, there we go. Let's have a look. just randomly, I'll have a look at this post and we'll take a look at a few examples. So the post is from Brand with Joel. 10 years later, and my family still isn't sure of what I do for a living. All right. Don't worry about the post itself, but let's have a look at some of the comments. My mom told me I should start a company one day when I've been running one for 2 years. More of a statement. It doesn't give Joel much to go off there. He can go and talk more about that if he wants to, but it's not making it very easy for him. Bolter, tell us, Joel, what do you do for a living? Boom, perfect. Now, Bolter, shout out. I know other people who run this, they know what they're doing. Someone in the chat, please tell me why this is a good example of say more. And it's literally exactly what's on your mind. What does this encourage the creator who posted this to do? Starting a convo, exactly. Follow-up questions spark conversation, yes. Invite convo, yes. Now Joel has to explain what he does to respond. That's at least 3 sentences. Boom, boom. Thank you. We're onto something. Cool. Now, I remember when I started on Threads, 17 to 1,000 followers, it was an insane amount of engagement for me. And honestly, I had no funnel or nothing. It was just, I was really focusing on connections and going deep in engagement loops. An engagement loop is, this is a post that obviously got people to engage. Then Bolter, where's that post? Asked a question. Then Joel, let's say he does, comes and replies to Bolter. And then Bolter says, oh, that's so cool. Like you're a barista who loves to surf and helps people with branding so they can be a barista and surf as well. I don't know. And then Bolter's, oh, that's so random, but awesome. Like, where do you do that in the world? And then Joel is, oh, I'm in Australia. I live in this place called Margaret River. It's really cool. What about you? Who's the face behind the brand? Is this a full-time thing for you? What are we doing here? It's an engagement loop. More voluminous. I love that word, voluminous. Imagine if that engagement loop happened in every comment on this post. Think about the compounding effects of that in terms of what Zuck's priority is. You're keeping people on the platform, keeping people engaged longer, and or sparking discussions. You're also encouraging connections. Think about this from just a socializing perspective. If Bolter and Joel have just had this conversation about what they do for a living and where they are in the world, you now have a connection on Threads. You have a friend, which means you're more likely to go and comment on their stuff later with a meaningful reply and vice versa. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's not just a comment, it's saying more. Give people a reason to say more. Because if you don't, then you are not doing what Zuck wants you to do, and he's not going to give you anything in return. Are we finding this useful? Now, when I started on Threads, 0 to 1K was just a shitload of engagement. I grew very fast once I started towards maybe 900 onwards, because I had a bit of momentum. It's harder for people to take your content seriously if you have 17 followers versus, say, 900. And once I started getting to 1K, I was growing very fast. It was like 100 every 2 or 3 days. Honestly, it was because I was doing this perfectly without even realizing how this related to the algorithm. And now, as I reverse engineer why I did grow so quickly, it is just because of this. I was going deep in the replies. I was saying more. I wasn't just engaging for the sake of engaging and going through my sort of engagement block where I just spam my replies. I still try to give genuine replies, but I'm not saying more. I'm just saying thank you. And I'm sure many of you can relate to what I'm getting at there. I'm acknowledging what they've said, but I'm not continuing the conversation. And that's where my mistake has been with engagement on Threads so far in recent times. As we discuss the specifics of how the algorithm works, and then what those 5 actionable things are that you can do to increase your reach and engage, those are all going to be great. But if you can remember anything for the rest of this class, it's going to be this stuff that's highlighted on the screen. And if it's going to be one thing specifically, say more. I know for a fact that is something everyone on this call can take away after today and benefit from in the short to medium term on Threads. So now, how the algorithm works. This is more stuff. I think it's nonetheless very interesting. So ask questions and make friends. Yeah, Julianne, exactly what you said. How do you actually build a connection in real life? Do the same on Threads. That's it. How the algorithm works. This is the 3-step process. And by the way, this is from Meta. This is what Meta has on publicly available. It's a 3-step process. And this is the feed ranking. What do I mean by feed ranking? When I go to the feed here, my For You feed, and I refresh it, what determines which post ends up at the top here? And in this case, it's Anne Fernie. So why did Anne Fernie's post end up as the top one in my feed? It's because of these 3 things. How this relates to you. You want your post to be at the top of everyone's feed, everyone that you care about's feed. 3-step process, inventory, gathering content. Threads gathers posts from accounts you follow and recommended accounts. Then your content enters a pool and it must pass spam and quality checks before it's even considered for ranking. The quality checks, does this have prohibited content in it? If so, you fail this test. So if you have a racial slur, that's a very clear example. Like, you're not going anywhere. So you're not going to get past this step 1. So then we've got step 2, which is evaluating engagement cues. Meta's AI will look at various engagement signals to determine what should be shown to users. And this is based on your past interactions. So what you like, what you comment on, and who you engage with. This is coming from the perspective of what you're doing as you're posting content, but also the people who are already following you and how related that is to what you speak about. So what does that mean? If I talk about Threads growth, how many people who follow me are interested in that? Is there a harmony there? Or have I just had this scattergun approach of just getting numbers? That's a relevant factor. We're looking at your past interactions. So who you like, the content format. This is a relevant thing that we'll get to later. But text is mainly what we see on Threads, but you can see images, videos, or a mix of all the above. And then topic relevance. So we've got topic tags. Connections is an example of one. And those are used to categorize and recommend content as well. So that's step 2. Then step 3 is the actual ranking. So Meta predicts what will interest each person based on their past behavior. This is the interesting part that I think you should remember from this whole 3-step process if you're going to remember anything. Posts are tested in small batches. If they perform well, they get pushed to a wider audience. I want to make sure we address this as one of the actionable things you can do. Let's have a look at one of my recent posts to talk about how this actually. So this was scheduled because it was at 5:30 a.m. for me. How to be respected as a creator using AI, blah, blah, blah. Your voice, AI's output. This post, it was sent out in this small batch, just this little pool before it's put out to the rest of the world on Threads. If this performs well, it's telling Meta that other people outside of this little batch will also enjoy the post. So then it puts it out to more people, because if it passes the test in this small batch, then it's likely that it will pass the test on the whole platform, which means that it will keep people engaged for longer, which is more attention, more eyeballs, more advertisers, more money. But if it doesn't pass that test, then it's telling the algorithm that essentially this isn't going to give us much money. So fuck you. Like, we're not going to show your post to anyone. It's an extreme point, but that's what's going on behind the scenes. And that's what happened with this post. It didn't pass the test. This is how you see, for instance, if I were taking a look at my profile for the first time, you see decent results, but then you see this post that isn't my pin post, you're like, what the fuck's going on here? That's what's happening. It doesn't pass the test. Meta's algorithm won't push it out to more people. We'll talk about how to pass the test when we get into our 5 actionable things. That final point before we get into those is this means that not every person who follows me will see my post. Because if they did, in theory, this would have 13,000 views and not 730. That's where it comes into it. Like, it depends on how the algorithm ranks it based on the engagement it gets and its relevance to the people it's shown. To recap, before we move into our 5 actionable points, firstly, what Meta does is to create the feed ranking on the For You feed. It will gather content from accounts you follow, as well as any other recommended accounts, because that's how For You see a combination of people you do and don't follow. Then your content will enter a pool and pass the spam and quality check. So don't be stupid with what you post, basically. From there, we're looking at engagement cues, which is step 2. This is based on who you've engaged with in the past. It will have a look at the people who you engaged with and show your post to a combination of those people, as well as some new people. It will look at the format of your content, text-based, image, videos, and the relevance of the topic. I'll talk about topic tags later, but this is where you can use keywords like AI, copywriting, surfing, or hairdressing. Use those keywords because it makes it easier for the algorithm to show your audience who cares about your topic. Finally, it will perform the ranking. And this is where that test is done, which I think is essential. And we'll talk about it in a moment. If it passes the test, you'll start getting good results from your post in the following hours. If it doesn't, it will be somewhat limited. Any questions before we move on to what we can do with everything we've just discussed so far? Okay. Here are our 5 points. Some of this stuff, like writing great hooks, is our bread and butter in terms of it's very common advice and it's very important. And it's number 1 because it's a thing that we can and should optimize for the most because it's the most high leverage thing. The first line will determine whether the next line gets read and so on and so forth. The next thing that we can do with the algorithm instead of against it is use topic tags. I was doing a lot of research into this over the last week, and it was clear across the research that it's a good thing. I was using them a lot for the first 6 to 12 months of when they came out, and then I just stopped. I think we should use them. I'll talk about how in a moment. Then we want to optimize for conversations, not just likes, because of everything that we discuss at the start in terms of say more. Post at peak times. I'm actually going to change this because this is harder to control because we've all got different time zones. If a peak time for you is at 3 a.m., because at 3 a.m. your time is when most of your audience is awake, I don't think it's worth it. What we want to do here is, this is something we've heard before, or at least some of us have. I'll explain why, very important. And then also mix up content formats. This is something I learned in the last few weeks as I was doing my research. Again, I'll talk about the why. That's our overview. In terms of how to write great hooks, if you really want a whole masterclass on how to do that, and I highly recommend it because it's what I think is one of the most valuable college classes. I'll put it in the chat. There we go. This is one of the most valuable college classes. It gives you the tactics you need to write great hooks. Check it out. It's worth it. You'll learn a lot. I use that whenever I write long form posts. It's very valuable. Just the high level overview, what you can do. You can start with a question. You can make a bold statement. You can share a surprising stat or fact. Go and watch that college class. That will help you master the first line. Use topic tags for discoverability. If you're making the algorithm or the AI's job easier, then that's a good thing. If it can't figure out what your post is about, how is it going to show it to people it thinks will like your post? Make sense? So this is where you just use keywords. If I am talking about Threads growth or how to grow on Threads, I should use the word Threads in my post or how to grow on Threads. Because if I don't, I'm making the algorithm's job very hard. Exactly, right? Because it's like a filing or a categorizing system. The algorithm will look at the post, think, what are some keywords in here that can help me figure out what the post is about, and then who I should send it to to test whether it's a good post? Keywords, or in this case, topic tags. So the way I see this, great question on that topic, because this isn't a deep dive on topic tags, but I happened to write an entire newsletter about this in the previous iteration of my newsletter in 2023 and 2024. Fun fact, this was the first Threads newsletter. They came out in December 2023, and I wrote a whole newsletter about how you can use tags effectively. That is going to give you all the answers you need, and I'll put it in the chat as well. But I'll briefly discuss some key points. Directly answering your question, Juliana, you can only have one topic tag per post. What does that mean? Yeah. So as Sam just said, one per subthread as well. To show you, oh, I was already on the right page. Cool. Let's say I've got a new post. Hashtag. Notice what happens to the hashtag once I type a character. It disappears. Notice what happens when I hit spacebar and add in more words. That's how tags are different on Threads. They're actually meant to be incorporated into your content instead of just spammed at the bottom of it to game the algorithm. For example, let's say I write a hook and it says, what would you tag in that hook? Captain Sam, Threads algo, Threads, anyone else? Threads. If it doesn't work for you, if I've written this, it would make sense to put a tag. Notice how nothing happens. I don't know why that's the case, but basically, don't be alarmed. It doesn't mean it's not working. You just have to go and delete everything after the point you want to tag. Oops. And type it fresh. Tag. Whoops. Wasn't that weird? Use the button. That also helps. What you can do as you're typing is, it's a bit fiddly, but it's worth using. Basically, start fresh and do what I've just done. Start with a fresh post, use the tag. Everyone's answer was spot on. There's no wrong or right. I would either use the topic tag Threads or Threads algorithm. Both of them are great. Even though you're limited to one tag per mini post, it doesn't mean you can only have one tag in the entire post. So here we can see two. And if I went and posted that, one tag would be Threads, the other would be Threads algorithm. What do you write about? What are some keywords that relate to what you write about? Put those keywords in your post. Then, why? Firstly, if you are scrolling on Threads and you see a little bit of blue text among the wave of black, if you're on the light version of it, or white text if you're on the black version of Threads, it stands out. One, I think it's actually an underrated version to grab attention. And then coming back to discoverability, if you use the keywords and they're not tagged, that's good. Algorithm, if you use keyword with tags, algorithm like more. That's basically what the research says. I was doing it a lot. And now that I think back on the results, it makes sense that they're pretty good. As Sam says, basically highlighting what you're talking about in the given thread or subthread. It's like you're highlighting it in real life. Optimize for conversations, not just likes. This is really what we discussed at the start. Follow-up replies. Reply to every comment to double your engagement. If you have 20 comments, then you go and reply to all 20 of them. You've just doubled the amount of engagement on the platform for that post. All other things being equal. If you're not just saying thanks so much, and there's actually something easy for you to continue the conversation about, such as the example of Bolter and Joel. Joel then asks Bolter, where are you based in the world? Have a conversation. It's a compounding effect because you're keeping people on the conversation longer, you're making connections, you're saying more, you're making Zuck happy. So this is a really important part with the follow-up replies. But also, how can you get people to start their own conversations? Or like, how can you start a conversation that gets other people keen to join? This is where it can be a bit overused when you have a CTA to comment, let me know below. But you want to come at this with a genuine desire for people to interact with you. What does that mean? Hatham, who's one of our teachers inside of Full Circle, I've seen him do this really well. He literally says, So let's say if he's talking about some type of therapy because he's a psychologist, ACT is a type of therapy that he's very passionate about. What do you think about ACT, CTA to get people to talk about it? And then he has this. It's a completely different reaction in my mind. If it was left at just what do you think about ACT, I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know." But then once I read this, I think, oh, he actually cares. And I'm more likely to give him my take on it. It's a really simple thing that you can say, but I really believe it enhances your engagement rate significantly after asking a question. And I've seen it. I've seen Hatham use this with great success. So that's how you can actually get people to take the stuff that you say seriously or the questions that you ask seriously. And yeah, we'll talk about the whole controversy thing in a sec. I'll talk about, don't post and ghost. Really important. Say it all the time. But why? It relates to the test that your post goes through once you have posted it. Now, I don't know how long this test goes for. I couldn't find that in any research, but let's just call it an hour. Let's say your post is put in this test of a small batch of people it shows it to for an hour. Then a few people comment on it and they're thoughtful comments that give you the opportunity to say more, keep the conversation going. Let's say 5 people do that in the first hour, and then you don't reply to them. What does that mean? It means that you've effectively halved the amount of time this post has kept people on the platform. If I go to reply to those people within that hour during the test, maybe the algorithm is thinking, oh, this post has kept people on the platform for 10 minutes. Let's say my reply gets the people who initially replied to come and reply again. Now it's 15 minutes. And then I reply to them, and now it's 25 minutes. And so it goes. And that's just with, say, 5 replies. Imagine if that's with another 10, all in an hour. This is how we're gaming the algorithm, but it's ethical, legal, and authentic because you're building relationships. You're gaming the algorithm by building a relationship. You're genuinely getting to know people in the replies. By doing that, you're keeping people on the platform, keeping the conversation going, passing this test, and increasing the likelihood that the algorithm will show it to more people. From what I've seen, it's quite important before it hits the hour mark. But essentially, straight after you posted, that's when you can maximize your post potential. Straight afterwards by thoughtful, meaningful replies for all the reasons we just spoke about. Because if you are available online to reply immediately after you posted, then you're giving yourself the greatest chance to have the conversation going for as long as possible thereafter. But if you come and reply only on the hour, maybe that's towards the time when the test is ending. That's why we don't want to post and ghost. I've essentially just said what I just spoke about. Like recency matters. Fresh posts have a short-ish window to gain traction, etc. Then finally, mix up content formats. So text-only posts work, obviously. It's a text-based platform. However, this is something I learned recently as well. Diverse content is good because it's essentially, it's showing threads that there is more potential for more people to come and use this platform. If threads did not want more formats, it would just be text-based. The number of people who would like to just post text-based content is much smaller than the amount of people who want to post other formats as well. Let's say 100 million people just text-based, 200 million who like text-based, but they also like other formats like images and videos as well. Threads is obviously going to try and get those other 200 million people because more attention, more eyeballs, more advertisers, more money for Zuck. How does that relate to us? It means that Threads is not going to throttle the reach of image posts or video posts if they're good posts. Because if it is a good post, it will show it to more people. It will keep people on the platform for longer. other type of creators who enjoy videos and images will start coming onto Threads as well. More money for Zuck. That's the why. What should you do with that? Basically, just consider posting an image or a video every now and then, once every few days. Just essentially don't limit yourself and think you can only post text-based stuff, because the other formats are valuable and the algorithm recognizes that. If you take away one thing from today, it is say more. For all the reasons we've already discussed, I think I've emphasized this point enough. We hopefully know why this is important now. If you understand the algorithm much better after today's class, give me a reaction in the chat. Hopefully this hasn't been going over your head. Found it useful. Juliana, Rosalia, awesome. So, Angelica, thank you. Love it. I have a profit call for someone inside Full Circle who's just joined. If you wouldn't mind jumping over to that one and getting that ball rolling, I'll come and join you in 5 minutes or so. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. What you should do in light of this call, because that's trendy. Yeah. I think we're going to make it a thing, Becca. What you should do after this call is watch the college class that I put in the chat. I think, did I link it? By the way, these notes and the whole recording of the call will be made available inside of Saints College in a few days. And keep an eye out for Kenny, Captain Kenny. He's the one who uploads the recordings. So watch that college class. It will teach you the 5 most important things I know about when it comes to writing great hooks. Then use tags. It's going to help. It helped me. Then optimize for conversations, not just likes. To put it differently, what keeps people on the platform longer? A thoughtful reply or a like. Don't post and ghost because of that small test that the algorithm conducts with your post in, let's just say, an hour, but it could be 30 minutes, just thereabouts. And then finally, mix up content formats, because Zuck wants more creators on the platform so he can earn more money. And that's it. So a couple of questions here. Suspended from Threads, what could get you suspended? Namely, it is a lot of the things that wouldn't be much of a surprise if you're posting racist content, sexist content, homophobic content, derogatory remarks, explicit content, anything that harms a minor. Those are some of the key things, right? But then there are some of the other things that are more nuanced, like it detects spam activity on your account, or you're a bot. Things like that could also get you suspended. And that's a good segue into part 2 of our algorithm discussion, which is what not to do on Threads. And that's what we're talking about next week. So how's that for a cliffhanger?